Okay. Well, welcome back to the second part of Bible study. It's on the book of Jonah. And I picked this book because it's short. And I've already picked some more, chosen some more Bible studies. I will be doing the woman at the well after this, which is in the Gospel of John. And and that's just one passage. It's only one paragraph. And then I'll do Bartimaeus, which is in the Gospel of Mark. And that's only one paragraph too. So they'll be short, but are very interesting. But last time I talked about Jonah, just a real fast review. The book is only 48 verses, and it's divided into two parts. So part one is chapters 1 and 2, and then the part 2 is chapters 3 and 4. And it's divided in terms of Jonah's response to God's call. God is calling Jonah to go to Nineveh, which is the capital of Assyria. It's in present-day Iraq, and he doesn't want to go because we know from history that the Assyrians attacked Israel and decimated it and took the people off into captivity. If you ever heard of the 10 lost tribes of Israel, those are the ones, and they're still lost. They were completely decimated. So Jonah was a real character. You'll see him in 2 Kings chapter 14, verses 28 and following. And he is the advisor and the prophet to King Jeroboam II, who is, his capital is of Samaria. Also in the Samaria is the northern tribes. You remember the tribes were divided at the war after Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, taxed the people so heavily and was such a terrible king. They rebelled, and 10 tribes went to the north called Israel, and the south is called Judah, and that's where we get the term Jews, is from Judah, because only Judah survived. Israel was decimated. It was also called Ephraim because Jeroboam the first and then his son the second were from the tribe of Ephraim, and so it's called Israel, or the capital is Samaria of Ephraim. Anyway, he doesn't want to go. So the first two chapters about Jesus going the opposite and being defiant, and chapters 3 and 4 is Jonah going and doing what he's called to do. So now the reason why that Israel is going to be decimated is God has warned them time and time again to be faithful, and they're running after these pagan gods, idols, and the idol is Baal, and is a terrible god. A lot of sexual licentiousness in their worship ceremonies, and also sacrifice of babies and small children. So it's what the Jews call an abomination of abominations. And God's not going to put up with it. He finally saves up the Syrians to put an end to that, and to an end to them. So that's what the story's about. And so Jonah goes, God says, rise up and go. And Jonah goes down to Joppa, was the sea coast, and then gets passage on a ship and goes down into the ship, and then a big storm comes up, you know that story, and they throw all of their cargo overboard to try to save everybody, and the sailors cast lots, and it falls on Jonah. Who is it that has offended a god or the gods? And it turns out to be Jonah, who has offended his God, who is Yahweh. And so they still don't try to kill him or anything, but Jonah insists that he be thrown overboard. So he is thrown overboard, and then he gets gobbled up by this big fish and is in the belly of the fish. And the question is, why does Jonah why is he so eager to die? He wants to die. It matches the second part of the book. He wants to die because he doesn't want to preach to the Ninevites, because he wants to save Israel. And so, but in the belly of the fish, he prays what they call a todah, or a Thanksgiving psalm, and which starts with a lament and then goes into a praise, and then God spares him from the fish that he has appointed. The word is appointed, the fish, to take care of Jonah, and he pukes him up on the shore. End of chapter 2. Now chapter 3 is that he says, rise up, Jonah. It says, then the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time, saying, rise up, go to Nineveh, that great city, and proclaim to it the message that I tell you. And Jonah rose up. By the way, Jonah means dove, so he's a symbol of Israel. And he rises up, and then he preaches. And Nineveh, as it's a large city, it's 3 days to walk through it, so big. They say, scholars say, about 120,000 people in the city, which is a lot in those days. And so that matches up. 3 days in the fish, 3 days in Nineveh, which is sort of like saying that Nineveh is sort of like the belly of the fish. It's a pretty awful place. And so, and then not only does he rise up, but the king rises from his throne, takes off his kingly robes and puts on sackcloth and sits in ashes. And so then he sends out a decree that everybody is to do penance. Then maybe this God will spare them. And everybody does, including the animals. And the reason why the cattle are included in this penance is God will say later on, Jonah, why are you angry? Because I spared them, because they don't know their right from their left, or the animals. In other words, the book is saying these Ninevites are like cattle. They don't have a clue of what's right and wrong. So why would you want, Jonah, why would you want to destroy them? But then God knows Jonah wants to spare the Israelites, but they haven't listened to God. So that's the story. And then let me just read a little bit more here. Now, Nineveh was an exceedingly great city, 3 days' journey in breadth, and Jonah began to go into the city, going a day's journey, and he cried, yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. So that's it. He's a prophet. This is the shortest book of the prophet. He's what they call a minor prophet. And minor prophets are just simply the ones that have short books. That's why they're called minor. But that's it. The whole oracle of warning is just that one phrase. Yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. And then it doesn't happen. So it's not much of a prophecy. And the people of Nineveh believed God, and they proclaimed a fast and put on sackcloth, and the greatest of them to the least of them. And then tidings reached the king, and the king rose from his throne, as I said, and then he too put sackcloth and ashes and sat in ashes, and he proclaimed and published throughout Nineveh by the decree of the king and his nobles, that every man, nor beast, herd, or flock taste anything, let not be fed or drink water, but let man and beast be covered with sackcloth, and let them cry mightily to God. Yea, let everyone turn from his evil ways and from the violence which is in his hands. Who knows, God may yet repent and turn away his fierce anger, so that we perish not. And then that fourth chapter is very short, but it has interesting stuff, because Jonah then goes out into the hill country and he builds a booth, a Sukkot. You've heard the feast, the festival of booths, a Sukkot, and it's very confusing because there's a vine there too that God caused. He appoints. God appoints the fish, and then God appoints the vine, and then Jonah's in the shade while the king is sitting in ashes and everybody's suffering. Jonah's laying back and taking it easy and hoping God will not spare them. And so God appoints a worm that we see, for example, in Deuteronomy, we see that as well, and attacks the vine. We don't know what the vine is called, a kikion, but nobody knows what that is. Maybe a gourd. It's not a grapevine, but it's a symbol of Israel. So the worm attacks the vine, eats all the leaves, and then God sends a east wind that scorches the vine too and kills it. And then Jonah is very angry. Do you well to be angry, says God? He says, I do well to be angry, angry enough to die. Why is he angry? See, if you don't know that he's trying to save Israel, then he seems like a spoiled brat, you know. But it's also confusing. Jonah is angry because of the vine. But, you know, so it's kind of, when you read it, it's called dyschronology. That is a flashback. We see that in movies. They show a flashback of what happened earlier. And so what happened earlier is not in sequence. I mean, the way they put it in the script, you know, we have the booth and the vine, and Jesus, Jonah is upset while he's in his booth, but the fact is what he's upset about is the vine. So you have to know that that's a flashback, and that's what upset Jonah. And so it ends up then that Jonah is really, really angry because I told you so. You know, I just knew that you'd feel sorry for them and forgive them and spare them. And so he is very angry. And God says, why are you angry? And should not I pity Nineveh, that great city in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left, and also much cattle. The reason they throw the cattle is a comparison. These Ninevites have how much of a clue as the cattle themselves. You know, this is why do you want them to die, Jonah? They don't know anything. They're totally ignorant. But they're fierce warriors and the scourge of the entire Middle East too. So that's an issue too. And God uses them because He's told the Israelites to turn away from their ways, and they just didn't listen. For generations, they wouldn't listen. Now, Jonah's book is also written at the same time as Hosea, for example, and Amos. And those two books are the same way. They're talking about disloyalty to God, and God, who does everything for them, can't cotton to their promiscuity in terms of running off after false gods. So that's the story. So what I'd like to say is, you know, have the insight of that. I'd like people who hear this to pick up the book. It'll take at least 15 minutes to read the whole thing. It's so short. But what I told you about it, everything will make sense, and that will be a start. And teenagers, you might read it too, because you're going to get older and get married, and that way you can pick up the Bible and say, I've got this. I can explain this one at least. And so you'll know something. And that's the whole point, for you to know something. So, I want to stop.